Yeah, fraud is still a huge problem, of course. We see tons of fraudulent activity in the space. We have all kinds of things that we do on the front end to protect our clients, to protect their budgets, to protect their brand from fraud, from things that are not brand safe. But it's still a big problem. And I think that the key to rooting it out is to not just address it where the problem presents itself, but to try to get to the root of it. And so the things that make me optimistic about the space is I see a lot of publishers and brands and agencies starting to work together a little bit more to say, if we are going to address this problem, as we say, Butler Till, we're a B Corp, so one of the mantras of that is that the big problems in the world, in business, and then certainly in our industry, require a collective approach. And so I do see publishers and agencies and supply partners working together to say, like, we've got to come together on solutions. We can't simply use ad blocking to stop this, like when the impression is served, or use those preventive measures. We need to do that, and there are great solutions out there for that. But if that's the only thing that we're doing, then we're never going to really solve the problem, which starts well upstream from that.
Could you just expand a little bit about where the problem exists? I know there's not one problem or one scenario, but tell us where fraud occurs in the programmatic supply chain.
Yeah, I mean, it occurs throughout the programmatic supply chain, unfortunately. But the place that it starts is with really some level of fraudulent impression, whether that is a display impression, a CTV impression, and those are bots. Those are, very sophisticated, robots that are out there crawling the connected world, trying to look like human beings for one reason or another. And that could be to pump up impressions on a low quality and or fraudulent publisher, or it could be to build up an online profile that then is able to commit other types of fraud because it has tricked all of us. And again, we're all the victims. And I think that's something to keep in mind and remember when we're talking about this issue is we're all the victims here. This is being perpetrated on us collectively. No matter what you do, where you are in the world, if you transact online, if you use the internet at all, you are paying a tax effectively for the fraud that's happening in the space. And those dollars that all of us are paying, and not it's not showing up on our phone bill, but we are paying for this in one form or another. It's going to fund some of the most pernicious activity in the world. These are criminal organizations that do things that are very harmful to people, to our planet, and I think it's incumbent on all of us to try to help root that out.
I want to ask, is fraud, talk about fraud with CTV, where that's going, and also, is fraud pervasive in apps or in the open web or both, or how does that work out?
Yeah. So in terms of CTV, it's spoofing impressions because that's where the dollars are flowing. And so we've seen big migration from linear television, of course, to connected television. That's not surprising to anyone, and streaming is where it's at. And brands want cost-effective solutions in CTV. And that's one of the things that really has put some pressure on the fraud space there, is that CTV, because it's in such high demand, because the free ad-supported or even any form of ad-supported connected television has relatively limited inventory right now, relatively limited usage compared to a lot of other potential channels. That's driving up prices. Because those prices are, you see Netflix and Disney Plus coming out with their plans for ad-supported where $60+ CPMs and limited targeting, that is a publisher's market in a lot of ways right now. So brands, agencies, all of us on the buy side are looking for deals, looking for ways to drive down cost. And just like we did with programmatic, call it a decade ago, that is opening up opportunity for fraud in the CTV space. It's because high demand, limited inventory, that's where you're going to see fraud make its entry point. And you ask about, is it in apps in the open web? It's in both. I mean, the open web is certainly where fraud is the easiest, just because the kind of ethos of the open web is just that. It's going to be open. We don't want to put like really, really strict guardrails everywhere about, we don't want to limit access to real people to the web. So we kind of err on the side of openness. So that also, just like, a free and open society is going to come with those challenges too. So that's definitely where we see some fraud happening.
So Scott, are you optimistic or pessimistic about sort of the work that Human's doing? You're working with them and others like in the road ahead. I assume the road is always just like one car link ahead of the fraudsters. So you have to keep on working at it. But where are things going into the next year, do you think?
I am optimistic on balance. Cautiously optimistic, I suppose, and realistic about the challenges that are still there. But I love the work that Human is doing. Like, they have really, really sophisticated solutions to these problems. They're positioning on really not just finding technical solutions, although they certainly are doing that, as are others in the space. But a technical solution is only going to perpetuate what's really an arms race or a game of whack-a-mole. It's like, well, I find a clever solution to block this or root it out or whatever. You find a clever solution to get around that, and on we go. But Human has really gone after disrupting the economics of cybercrime. And so if they can just make it not worth your while, maybe we're not completely stopping it in a technical sense, but it's just not worth it when you do it. Like, we make it too hard or take away the financial incentive for doing it. I think that is a big part of the answer. And so I'm optimistic with the direction that they've taken there. I think it's really smart and good for our industry.